Nate Diaz is looking at a potential return to the UFC. He stated this on a podcast, as you can see right here. Nate Diaz wants to return to the UFC. And of course, he's out here calling out McGregor for a trilogy, which we'll get to later. But not only that, he's calling for a BMF title fight with Max Holloway. And again, not only that, this man also said he would love to fight Ilia Topuria. Now, is Nate Diaz actually going to return? I don't know. I personally think he will, but that's what I'm here for. We're going to look at 5 potential opponents that Nate Diaz could return to the UFC and fight. Spoiler alert, he's not going to be fighting Ilia Topuria. Unless Ilia Topuria is a D1 glazer of McGregor, which we've seen in the past. He does everything Conor McGregor does. He has the same tattoos as him, basically. He became the featherweight champ, moved up, trying to become a lightweight champ. If he does that, becomes a lightweight champ, possibly we see Ilia Topuria recreate a Diaz fight like McGregor did. But the problem is Nate Diaz is 40, I think. Ilia Topuria is in the peak of his career. Ilia Topuria is going to be the first one to chin Nate Diaz. But I don't think that fight's going to happen. I don't see Ilia Topuria chasing a Diaz fight. He's not like McGregor. He's not chasing money at this point in his career. I think he's chasing legacy fights, and Nate Diaz isn't necessarily a legacy fight at this stage in his career. And I know this is going to sound crazy. The more I'm thinking about this fight, actually, that's a tough fight. That is a tough fight for Ilia Topuria. Obviously, I do think he would get it done, but I mean, Nate's a lot bigger than him. All right, that fight's not happening, bro. But let's get into the 5 potential fights that I think could happen. I could see the UFC making, starting with the first one being the one I would be most excited for, and the last one being the least excited. But let's get into it. Starting off first, guys, you could have seen it coming from a mile away, guys. I know. Before you click off the video, before you start typing in the comments, guys, we're still talking about Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor in the Big 2-5. Yes. Yes, we are. And here's the thing, okay? Nate Diaz stated he wants to come back to the UFC. I believe him. I do think we will see Nate in the UFC. I genuinely do. Conor McGregor, on the other hand, he's a tough cookie, man. He's a tough cookie. Conor McGregor has a lot of money. So does Nate Diaz, but McGregor has a lot more money than Nate. It's not even close. But here's the thing about McGregor. McGregor was supposed to fight Michael Chandler on multiple different cases. The fight never happened, okay? But if anybody is going to pull out McGregor and bring him back to the UFC, I think it's Nate Diaz. They have unfinished business, like Nate said. They could set up a potential trilogy. And Nate Diaz, you know, he's not at all an easy fight, but he's 40. I think that is a lot more eye-catching, mouth-watering. Okay, pause that. A lot more mouth-watering for McGregor because their first 2 fights both were in the top 5 highest-selling pay-per-views of all time, I believe. If they do a trilogy, even though both of them are unks, both of them are washed up for sure, if they do a trilogy, it's going to end up in that same top 5 highest-selling pay-per-views. And the thing about McGregor, if he wants to come back, yes, the money's going to be a big part of it, I believe. He's not going to want to fight a no-name. But if he comes back, he's going to want to come back and win. And I know we're talking about Diaz and McGregor way past their prime. Maybe we need to give it up. But, bro, you cannot tell me, I don't care how hardcore of a fan you are, bro. You cannot tell me you would not be excited. But this fight makes all the sense in the world. Like I said, they're 1-1. They have unfinished business. And I feel like Nate Diaz has the pull. You know, him and Conor, they don't like each other, but I feel like they kind of do. They're kind of buddies, low-key. They respect each other. If anybody's pulling McGregor out of retirement for sure, I think it's Nate Diaz. I was thinking about this earlier. Dana White made a comment a while back that he has something in the works that nobody will see coming, okay, for this year. Supposed to be in the fall or winter of this year. We still don't know what that is. Is it potentially Nate versus Conor 3? Probably not. But I don't care how old these dudes are. They're going to sell tickets. They're going to sell pay-per-views. On top of this, another thought that just popped into my head. The UFC is about to part ways with ESPN, right? They need a big deal. Maybe you're going to make a deal with Netflix. I don't know. Maybe do away with pay-per-views. I hope they do. But if they have a fight like this lined up, Diaz-McGregor 3, it's proven to sell pay-per-views, a lot of pay-per-views at that. It's proven. The CEO of Netflix, whoever's behind the scenes trying to make a deal, if they see a fight like this that is on deck, on hand for the UFC to book, that gives them all the more leverage to sign the deal. But enough with the McGregor talk. Obviously, it's a hard ask for McGregor nowadays, but if anybody's going to come back and fight Nate Diaz, if anybody's going to fight Nate Diaz in general, I would prefer it be Conor McGregor. You know, let's see the trilogy, but let's keep it rolling. Next up, the man that Nate Diaz just called out, Max Holloway. Max Holloway is not so washed up like Conor, not so washed up like Nate. This one feels like a mismatch, right? You would think. But Max Holloway is a former 145er. Nate Diaz is going to be bigger than him. Obviously, I would be picking Max Holloway to win this fight. Two very durable fighters. I think it would be a good scrap. I think Max Holloway would kind of style on him, but I feel like this is a potential fight that we could see depending on how Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier goes. So Max Holloway is already the current BMF champion. He's scheduled to fight Poirier at 318. And here's my thing with this fight. If Max Holloway goes out there and beats Dustin in his final fight, I don't think Max Holloway is going to, keep defending the BMF belt. I think he's going to try to push for another title shot against Islam, or not against Islam, against Ilya, Charles, whoever's the champion, which would be good for him. But if Dustin beats Max Holloway, it kind of knocks Max Holloway out of title contention, at least for right now. The lightweight division is already insanely stacked. So if Dustin beats Max Holloway, well, Max wouldn't be the BMF champion anymore, so that would get tricky. But I could see him doing this fight, chasing a money fight, and it's a winnable fight for Max. Or, hear me out, if Max does go out there and beat Dustin, which I do think he will, maybe the UFC has this in the back of their mind. Look, you're the BMF champion, defend against Nate Diaz. I know it doesn't make all the sense in the world for you, but we're going to give you X amount of money if you do it. And if you beat Nate Diaz, you can be guaranteed the next title shot at lightweight. So if the UFC does this, it sounds like Justin Gaethje's waiting for a title shot. I don't agree with that, but it looks like it's going to happen. If you do this, if Max fights Dustin and then fights Diaz, assuming he wins both, which is still a big ask, I could see the UFC promising this man a title shot if he wins both. Because the UFC lightweight division has a lot of things to clear up right now. We got Charles versus Ilya going down at 317. We've got Arman Tsarukyan, who's the number one contender. We've got guys like Justin Gaethje. There's just a lot of chaos there. So in the meantime, if you need to, this is a fight that is going to sell a lot of pay-per-views. Again, it doesn't matter how old Nate Diaz is. The trash talk is going to be great. The fight's going to be pretty cool as well. So this will be the next best fight, in my opinion, for Nate Diaz to return to. I don't want him fighting Ilya Topuria, bro. I don't want to see that. But let's keep moving on. This one, might have caught some of you by surprise. But Nate Diaz versus Colby Covington, guys, listen. You cannot tell me you would not be insanely hyped. The build-up would be so funny. Again, both guys past their primes. Potentially a winnable fight for Nate Diaz, bro. Now, this would not be a BMF title fight, but this could honestly be a main event by itself, or it could be a banger co-main event on a Madison Square Garden card. Yeah, I think this could be a perfect 5-round co-main event for MSG, honestly, as soon as this November. Again, both guys are past their prime, but Colby Covington's goated at trash talk. So is Nate Diaz, even though Nate Diaz is, with that. I don't even know what a gazelle is. Either way, Colby Covington's going to throw his best insults. Both of these guys, they want money fights. They're big names in the sport. Colby, probably not as big of a name as Max Holloway, and definitely not Conor McGregor. But still, like I'm saying, it's a banger 5-round co-main event. Whatever the main event is, this is going to be a perfect supplemental fight that is going to help sell a lot of pay-per-views. Now, this one, I wouldn't be as excited for the fight, which maybe I would after I hear the trash talk. I would be super excited, though, for the build-up. But let's keep it rolling, bro. This is another one that might be kind of a stretch. Nate Diaz versus Dan Hooker. When I think of this, I just think of blood. I think of violence. Both of these fighters, very durable. But Dan Hooker's in the midst of a title run right now, right? I hope so. But Dan Hooker also had to get surgery on his hand, so it's kind of set him back. So if Dan Hooker, again, the lightweight division is kind of crammed right now. If Dan Hooker doesn't get a top contender like an Arman Tsarukyan, Justin Gaethje rebooked, or Paddy Pimblett, whatever, if he doesn't get that, or maybe he just doesn't want that, the UFC could bribe this man with a potential BMF title fight. This one's also got a stipulation involved, okay? Dustin Poirier has to beat Max Holloway for this fight to happen, in my opinion, because if Dustin beats Max, he is now the BMF champion. He's riding off into the sunset. The BMF title would now be vacant. So now let's do Dan Hooker versus Nate Diaz for the vacant BMF title. Nate Diaz, who's already competed for the BMF title, said he wants to fight for it again. Dan Hooker is literally the definition of BMF. Now, this fight's kind of out there because Dan Hooker, the hardcore fans know him. The people that watch the UFC know him, but outsiders don't really know Dan Hooker. This could potentially be a chance for you to turn Dan Hooker into a superstar, especially if he takes out Nate Diaz. But that's kind of a lot to ask because Dan Hooker is not an up and comer. He's already like 35 years old. But all I'm saying is this fight is pure violence. Now, I don't know if this is enough star power to headline an event. So again, this could be a banger co-main event. You could throw the BMF title fight on, or under an undisputed title. But again, I still would be hyped for this one. It wouldn't be my first pick, but I could see it. But let's go ahead and move on to the fifth and final option in my eyes for Nate Diaz's return, and that is a rematch with Jorge Masvidal. This one's a tough ask right here. This is why I have it at number 5. Well, first of all, because they're both old, they're both washed up. They both fought for a BMF title in the past. Maybe they do a rematch. But the thing is, both guys are out of the UFC right now, so you have to get both guys on board. They've both fought each other before for the BMF title. They've also fought in boxing. So technically, they're 1-1. Nate Diaz got the nod in the boxing match. Jorge Masvidal got the nod in the UFC fight. It's sort of a trilogy in the UFC. But again, these are two pretty big names in the sport. Again, they're not in the sport right now. But if you bring both of them back, they both have stated they want to come back, you could sell this fight. These two fighters, I don't know if they could sell a pay-per-view by themselves. Obviously, people are going to tune in to Masvidal and Diaz, but they're both like 40. So this is another case that could be a 5-round co-main event, whether it's for the BMF title or not. You could sell this as a co-main event on, again, like an MSG card, or maybe even in Las Vegas. But to me, this one has better name value than a Colby Covington, than a Dan Hooker. But like I'm saying, they're both washed. It would be Unk versus Unk, like a backyard street brawl. The two uncles will be yapping at each other, fighting at the cookout. And honestly, I don't even know who would win this at this point. I kind of lean towards Nate Diaz, but I'd be okay with this matchup. But again, it's not my first choice. That's why I have it at number 5. I'd much rather see McGregor, much rather see a Max Holloway fight. But again, is Nate Diaz even going to return to the UFC in the first place? Honestly, I don't know. I think yes. I'm leaning towards yes. He seems legit about it. He really wants to fight. We just have to find him a proper opponent. I don't think Nate Diaz is just going to say yes to everybody. Like Nick Diaz was supposed to fight Vicente Luque. That's not happening with Nate. I think you have to give him that's a good word, genuinely. But I think you have to give him a legitimate, another big word. All right, I'm getting off track. Give him a real star in the sport. But that's going to be it for me, guys. Let me know in the comments which matchup you would want to see for Nate Diaz potentially making his return to the UFC. I know we're still talking about Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor in the Big 2-5, which is crazy. But yes, I think now is the best time more than ever, or more than any recent time. But y'all be sure to hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're new, or if you're not subscribed, and turn the post notifications on. But hopefully we see Nate Diaz in the near future, bro. I'd be excited. I know he's Unk status. I know he's old. He's flabby. But I'd be fine with him making his return. That's going to be it for me, guys. I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we out.